Grandpa Skrillex. Grandpa Skrillex. Grandpa Skrillex. Grandpa Skrillex. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, aka Grandpa Skrillex, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Neurosis record, Fires Within Fires. One of the most legendary bands in sludge metal and doom metal are back with a new record. These guys have multiple classics under their belts. I recommend you check out albums such as Souls at Zero or Through Silver in Blood. Can't go wrong with these. And honestly, I wouldn't really hesitate to recommend this new record either. I'm finding it a little more engaging than the band's last full-length LP, Honor Found in Decay, which, in comparison with the rest of the band's discography, was a bit of a dud, but still, not really a bad album. A record that, in my opinion, proved that after almost 30 years, Neurosis is still one of the most consistent bands in metal. After 5 years of studio album silence, they could still drop a decent record. Now, as good as some of the moments on this record were, it did feel like Neurosis was at a bit of a dead end with this very atmospheric, slow, theatrical, dramatic, post-rock infused metal sound that they had been toying with since the late 90s. And Fires Within Fires recognizes that, and as a result takes a more direct approach. Now, relatively direct because the songs on this record are like 6 to 10 minutes long, but it's not like Neurosis spends a whole lot of time on this project kind of meandering and building tension and building a mood. The riffs, the drum beats, the vocals on this thing are quite aggressive, raw, and visceral a lot of the time. It's almost like the band is going back to some of the earlier records in their discography before they started making the more atmospheric material that they're mostly known for today. Now, that's not to say that this album doesn't have any subtle or moody moments. This is a Neurosis album. It's just that the production doesn't really sound as dolled up as it has on the band's past few records, which was a bit off-putting at first. It's kind of weird hearing a new doom or sludge metal album that doesn't have that full, compressed, heavily distorted, saturated sound that most of these new records have, that's kind of become the gold standard over the past 10 years, which I think has been great for the genre's sound, but also has become a bit of a crutch for a lot of new bands who are just kind of lazily burying vocals behind the guitars. They're barely intelligible, not really writing interesting riffs or layering guitars all that interestingly because, hey, it sounds heavy as hell already. Neurosis have opted for the physical challenge here and have to overcome their lack of girth on this record with solid performances, creative guitar layering, some really gruff, nasty vocals, intelligible lyrics, engaging song structures, all of which are delivered on 5 monstrous tracks, and there's not really a slouch among them. Each one of them is as pummeling as it is kind of haunting, eerie, and beautiful. Each track features multiple phases which flow together really nicely and logically, and each track has its own personality, its own little musical or sonic quirk to it to separate itself from the rest. Like on the song A Shadow Memory, which features the album's most anthemic guitar leads and some very dramatic drum fills and some weird galloping grooves that I don't normally hear in this kind of music, but it actually works. The song Fire is the End Lesson has this really strange, heavy, massive, monstrous, monolithic wall of psychedelic guitars and what sounds like maybe squelching synths or something. It's really overwhelming and isn't monstrous because of the guitars kind of being puffed up too much. It's just kind of one guitar on top of another guitar on top of another guitar for a really interesting effect. Also, this passage is topped with some weird spoken word vocals that I thought were pretty interesting. The song Broken Ground is maybe the most beautiful track on the entire record, kicking things off with this very pretty, serene, ambient passage. It sounds heavenly, it sounds blissful, which is why the band has to sound as hellish as possible when the song eventually explodes, like around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. Also, it sounds like there's some kind of woodwind or like musical pipe worked into these heavy, massive, distorted riffs that actually complements the tune pretty well. It's like the band is trying to work some folk elements into their music on this track in a very tasteful way. And the closing track, Reach, is the most moody and melodic track on the entire record, which features these vocal harmonies that I didn't think Neurosis could pull off as well as they do on this thing. Not that they're super virtuous or anything like that, but they are kind of unsettling and dark. There are also these twangy guitar passages that strike me as maybe being a little country influenced or maybe like an early Modest Mouse record or something. In a lot of ways, Neurosis is pulling out all the stops on this record. The track eventually progresses into this hypnotic jam, which gives way to these thunderous riffs toward the end of the track. Every single song, this song included, has a really interesting structure. Like the band really came up with some creative ideas to guide us from one moment to the next on these tracks and didn't simply rely on how heavy they could make their production sound to sort of get themselves by. And the opening track, I think, does a good job of setting the tone for the album as being the dark, mysterious, and very raw, and aggressive experience that it is. I don't have a lot of complaints about this thing. I mean, it's not really reinventing the wheel or anything, but it is a great sludge record, and it's been a while since I've heard an album in this genre that's really blown me away or felt like it was a compositionally sound, compositionally creative, again, because I think all this heaviness, all these trends toward these really saturated mixes, I think the result has been a lot of albums that musically, melodically, riff-wise are kind of so-so. Neurosis have stripped things back a little bit. I think they've taken things back to basics in a way, and the results really speak for themselves because we have 5 incredibly passionate and solid tracks on this thing. I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this record. Transition, have you given this Neurosis album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry if you happen to disagree with my thoughts on this album. Though feel free to leave an angry comment in the comment section if you want. Neurosis, fires within fires, forever.